I was locked outside on my son's wedding day, unaware of the $105 million wedding gift I had planned. I stood at the entrance of Belmont Gardens, watching the October sun paint everything gold. The venue looked perfect. Cream roses everywhere, a jazz quartet tuning their instruments by the fountain, guests in expensive suits streaming past me like I was invisible. This was supposed to be my moment. 26 years of raising Marlowe alone. And today, I'd finally show him what it all meant. My hand brushed the envelope inside my jacket. The check was still there. $105 million. Not a single person knew. Not my partners at the firm. Not my brother. Not even Marlowe himself. This was my secret. My surprise. My way of proving that every sacrifice had a purpose. I'd arrived 2 hours early, because I couldn't sleep, spent the morning rehearsing my speech, imagining Marlowe's face when I handed him that check during the reception. 26 years of struggling, of choosing him over everything else, of being both mother and father. It was all about to make sense. Then I saw him walking toward me from the estate house. My son, 26 years old, tall, confident, wearing that charcoal tuxedo we picked out together last month. He should have been smiling, should have been nervous, excited, the way grooms are supposed to be. Instead, his face was stone cold, twisted with something I'd never seen aimed at me before. Pure hatred. "Marlowe," I called out, confusion flooding my chest. "Son, you look, don't." His voice cut through the morning like glass. "Don't you dare call me that." The quartet stopped playing. Conversations died. Every head turned toward us. I froze, my mind racing. We'd had dinner 3 nights ago, went over final details, laughed about his bachelor party. Everything was fine. Everything was normal. "Son, what's wrong?" "If you're nervous, that's completely," I said. "Don't call me that." He was walking faster now, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you can show up here, after what you did to her?" "Her?" My blood turned to ice. Behind Marlowe, half hidden by the estate's columns, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in 26 years. Evangeline Hartwell. The woman who abandoned Marlowe when he was 7 months old. The woman who vanished, without a word, without a call, without a single attempt to contact us in over 2 decades. And she was smiling, not a warm smile, not a reunion smile, a victory smile, like she'd just won something she'd been fighting for, and she wanted me to know it. "Marlowe, please, whatever she told you." "Security!" Marlowe shouted, and 2 guards appeared from nowhere. "Get him off this property, now." "Marlowe, listen to me, for 1 minute. 1 minute. I have something for you. Something important. I don't want anything from you." His voice cracked with rage. "You hurt her. You destroyed her. And I will never, ever forgive you for that." The iron gates began swinging shut. I stood there, my expensive suit, suddenly feeling like a costume. The $105 million check burning like fire against my chest. All around me. People I worked with. People who'd watched me raise Marlowe, alone. Stared with pity and confusion. The gates clanged shut. Marlowe locked them from the inside. And Evangeline, standing behind my son like a puppet master, raised one hand and waved at me, slowly, mockingly. Then they both turned and walked into the venue, leaving me on the wrong side of those gates with a fortune in my pocket and absolutely nowhere to go. But to understand how I got here, how a father could be locked out of his own son's wedding, how a woman who abandoned her infant could return and destroy everything, you need to hear the whole story. You need to know about the day I found a briefcase on a subway platform and made a choice that would change my life forever. Let me take you back. Back to when Marlowe was 7 months old, and I was a 30-year-old accountant who'd just lost everything. The drive home from Belmont Gardens took 32 minutes. I know because I counted every single one, watching the dashboard clock while my hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Leonard from the firm. My brother Desmond. Patricia from HR. I let every call go to voicemail. What could I possibly say to them? They'd all seen it. They'd all watched Marlowe scream at me, watched security escort me away, watched me walk to my car like a criminal being expelled from his own son's life. When I finally pulled into my building's parking garage, I just sat there, engine off, silence, pressing down like a physical weight. The envelope was still in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. The check looked exactly the same as it had that morning when I tucked it away with such hope. Made out to Marlowe Augustus Hartwell, $105 million. Signed by the executor of Thaddeus Brennan's estate 2 years ago. Thaddeus. God, if he could see this. If he could see what his generosity had become. A worthless piece of paper that my son would never receive, never want, never know existed. I'd planned this moment for 2 years. Every detail. I'd have the DJ pause the music after dinner. I'd take the microphone. I'd tell everyone about Thaddeus, about the briefcase, about the 23 years of mentorship that had built this fortune. Then I'd call Marlowe up and hand him the check in front of everyone. This is what your grandfather wanted, I'd planned to say. This is what 26 years of sacrifice earned. This is proof that choosing you was the best decision I ever made. Now the check was just paper, just ink, just a monument to my own stupidity. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hartwell, a young woman's voice. Professional, but uncomfortable. This is Miranda from Belmont Gardens. I'm calling because you left some personal items in our parking area, and we wanted to coordinate their return before the reception begins. Personal items, she meant me. They wanted to make sure I wasn't coming back. I'm not coming back, I said, my voice sounding hollow even to myself. Keep whatever's there. Are you certain? Because there's a gift table inside, and several guests were asking about. Throw it all away. I hung up before she could respond. I forced myself out of the car and up to my apartment. Everything looked the same. Same furniture, same photos on the walls, same life I'd built. But it all felt fake now. Like a movie set. Props in a play that had just been canceled mid-performance. The photos destroyed me. They were everywhere. Marlowe at 7 months. The earliest photo I had, after Evangeline left. Marlowe at 4, covered in paint from a disastrous art project. Marlowe at 9, gap-toothed and proud, holding his first science fair trophy. Marlowe at 13, awkward in his bar mitzvah suit. Marlowe at 18, graduation gown, heading to Yale on full academic scholarship. Every milestone documented, every achievement celebrated, every moment of his life that I'd been present for, that I'd sacrificed for, that I'd structured my entire existence around. And now all of it was rewritten. All of it transformed from a story of love into a story of abuse that never happened. I walked through my apartment like I was touring a museum of someone else's life. Marlowe's first pair of shoes, bronzed on the mantel. His acceptance letter from Yale, framed on my office wall. His Little League jerseys, carefully preserved. His childhood artwork, displayed with the same pride I'd shown every crayon drawing he'd ever made. How do you throw away 26 years? How do you accept that the person you loved most in the world has decided you're not just unworthy of love, but deserving of hatred? I ended up in my office, sitting at my desk, staring at my computer screen. My email inbox was open from that morning. When I'd been too excited to sleep, when I'd been counting down hours until the wedding. At the top sat an unread email, sent 3 weeks ago, from marlowe.hartwell whitmorestrategies.com. Subject: Do not contact me. My heart stopped. I clicked it with trembling fingers. Augustus, it began. Not Dad, not Father. My first name, cold and formal. I am informing you that I no longer wish to have any contact with you. Do not call. Do not text. Do not email. Do not show up at my home or workplace. Do not attempt to reach me through colleagues or family. Do not come to my wedding. I have blocked your number and email after sending this. Any attempts to respond will not reach me. This is not negotiable. Evangeline told me everything. I know what you did to her. I know why she had to leave. I know the lies you fed me my entire life. Looking back, I can see the signs, the control, the manipulation, the way you isolated me from anyone who might tell me the truth. You are no longer my father. You are nothing to me. Do not contact me again. Marlowe. The email was dated October 3rd, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks he'd been planning this. 3 weeks he'd known he was going to destroy me at his wedding. We'd had dinner together on October 5th. 2 days after he sent this, he came to my apartment, smiled at me, talked about wedding details, accepted my help with seating arrangements, all while knowing, all while planning to humiliate me in front of everyone I knew. I read that email 19 times. I counted, each time hoping I'd misread something, hoping there was another interpretation, hoping I was wrong about what it said. But the words never changed. Leonard showed up around 7 that evening, used the spare key I'd given him years ago for emergencies, found me still sitting at my desk, still staring at the email, the check lying on the desk beside me. Augustus, he said quietly. Something about hearing my name in his gentle voice broke whatever dam I'd been holding up all day. I sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside. Leonard didn't speak, didn't offer empty comfort, just pulled up a chair and sat beside me while I fell apart. When I could finally breathe again, I told him everything. About Evangeline's abandonment 26 years ago. About Thaddeus and the briefcase and the mentorship. About the $105 million. About the email I just discovered. All of it. Leonard's face hardened with each revelation. When I finished, he said, "That's not who you are. Everyone who knows you knows that. Augustus, you're literally the most honest, ethical, gentle person I've ever met." But Marlowe doesn't know that anymore. She convinced him otherwise, and that's all he'll ever believe now. Then we'll prove her wrong. With what? My voice rose. She has hospital records, Leonard, police reports, evidence I've never seen because it doesn't exist, but somehow she's manufactured it. How do I prove I didn't do something? How do I prove 26 years of love against 3 months of her poison? Leonard had no answer. Neither did I. He stayed until midnight. Before leaving, he gripped my shoulder and said, "You're not alone in this." But I was alone. That was the truth. For 26 years, it had been me and Marlowe against the world. Sure, I had colleagues who cared, friends who supported me. But at the end of every day, it had been us. And now it was just me. I didn't sleep that night. Sat in my office, watching the sun come up over the city, painting the buildings in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere out there, Marlowe was waking up next to his new wife. Somewhere out there, he was starting his married life. Somewhere out there, Evangeline was probably celebrating how perfectly her plan had worked. The check sat on my desk, a constant accusation. $105 million. 26 years of sacrifice. The price of a single lie. And completely, utterly worthless. 26 years earlier, I was 30 years old and standing on a subway platform in Lower Manhattan At 6:47 a.m., holding my 7-month-old son while trying not to fall apart. Marlowe was strapped to my chest in a carrier I'd bought secondhand. He was fussy, hungry, probably sensing the stress radiating off me like heat. I'd been awake for 36 hours straight, working a double shift at Henderson and Associates, where I was a junior accountant making barely enough to cover rent. Then coming home to a screaming infant I had no idea how to comfort alone. Evangeline had been gone for exactly 7 months. People always ask about the day she left, expecting some dramatic story. But the truth was quieter, more devastating in its mundaneness. It was a March morning, cold. Marlowe had been colically the night before, screaming for hours. Neither of us had slept. I came out of the shower to find her packing a suitcase. "I need time," she said, not looking at me. "A few weeks to clear my head. Motherhood is harder than I expected." I was exhausted, overwhelmed, working 70-hour weeks, trying to keep us afloat while Evangeline struggled with what we thought was postpartum depression. "Take whatever time you need," I told her. "My brother can help with Marlowe. You should rest." She barely hugged me goodbye, got in a cab, never looked back at the window where our son slept. "Just a few weeks," I remember saying to myself. Weeks became months. Her phone disconnected. Her parents claimed ignorance. Her friends knew nothing. The detective I finally contacted told me she'd left voluntarily. Credit cards showed a trail west. Passport was gone. Savings account emptied. 6 months later, divorce papers arrived from a Las Vegas attorney. She wanted nothing. No custody. No visitation. No contact. Just freedom. Just escape from the life we'd built and the child we'd created. I signed them with Marlowe sleeping against my chest, officially becoming a single father to a boy who would never remember his mother. So there I was, 7 months later, standing on that subway platform because I couldn't afford to keep my car, working a job that barely covered expenses, raising an infant alone, trying desperately not to drown. That's when I saw the briefcase. It was sitting on a bench, expensive black leather, completely out of place in the dingy subway station. For a moment, I almost walked past it, almost left it for someone else to deal with. But Marlowe chose that moment to start wailing, and I sat down to adjust his carrier. The briefcase was right there beside me. I looked around. No one seemed to be searching for it. No one seemed to have left it accidentally. It had just been abandoned. I picked it up. It wasn't locked. Inside was a business card, some papers, and something that made my breath catch. Cash. Stacks of it. $100 bills bundled neatly. I counted quickly, my hands shaking. $75,000. More money than I made in 2 years. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. Enough to solve every problem I had. Daycare bills, rent, Marlowe's medical expenses, the car repairs I couldn't afford. There were also photographs, an older man with kind eyes and silver hair. Documents with the letterhead, Brennan Capital Partners. A business card reading Thaddeus Brennan, Managing Partner. I sat there on that subway platform, Marlowe quiet now against my chest, holding $75,000 that could change everything. Nobody had seen me pick it up. Nobody would ever know. This man was clearly wealthy. Brennan Capital Partners was a legendary investment firm. He probably wouldn't even miss it. And I needed it, God, I needed it so desperately. Marlowe's daycare was threatening to drop him because I was behind on payments. My landlord had given me a final warning. I was rationing my own meals so Marlowe could have formula. $75,000 would give me breathing room. Let me actually be present for my son instead of constantly drowning in financial panic. But I looked at those photographs, at Thaddeus Brennan's face, at the documents, that suggested this briefcase contained not just money, but something irreplaceable. Business plans, client information, passwords to accounts. This wasn't just cash. This was someone's livelihood, someone's life's work, someone's professional reputation. And I thought about Marlowe, sleeping against my heart, about what kind of man I wanted to be for him, about what values I wanted to teach him as he grew. I pulled out my phone and called the number on the business card. Brennan Capital Partners, a crisp voice answered. Mr. Brennan, please, tell him someone found his briefcase. Thaddeus Brennan's office was on the 63rd floor of a building in Midtown, glass walls overlooking the entire city. Furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. A view that made me feel simultaneously insignificant and strangely hopeful. His assistant had ushered me into a conference room with leather chairs and modern art. I sat there in my worn coat, holding Marlowe, feeling completely out of place. When Thaddeus walked in, he radiated the kind of quiet power that comes from decades of success. Maybe 60 years old, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, moving with the confidence of someone who'd built empires. I stood awkwardly, juggling Marlowe. Mr. Brennan, I found your briefcase on the subway. Everything's there. I checked to make sure nothing was missing. $75,000 in cash. Your documents, your business materials, all of it. Thaddeus took the briefcase slowly, opened it, checked the contents methodically. Then he looked at me with an unreadable expression. You counted the cash. Yes, sir, wanted to make sure it was all there. And you never considered keeping any of it. I could have lied, made myself sound more noble. But something about his penetrating gaze made dishonesty impossible. I considered it, I admitted. For about 2 minutes, I considered it very seriously. I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of saint. I thought about what that money could do for me and my son. But you didn't take it. No, sir, because this briefcase, I gestured to it, this represents your work, your business, your reputation. Taking money I didn't earn would make me someone I don't want my son growing up seeing. Thaddeus was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured to a chair. Sit, please. What's your name? Augustus Hartwell. Tell me about yourself, Augustus. So I did. Told him about Evangeline leaving, about raising Marlowe alone, about working at Henderson and Associates, barely scraping by, about trying to be a good father, while feeling like I was failing at everything. When I finished, Thaddeus leaned back in his chair. That briefcase contains more than $75,000 in cash, Augustus. It contains client account information worth hundreds of millions. Passwords to systems that manage billions in assets. If I'd lost it, if it had fallen into the wrong hands, I could have lost everything. He paused, his voice growing softer. You returned it when you were desperate, when you had every justification to keep it, when no one would have blamed you. Do you know how rare that is? I just did what felt right. That's exactly my point. Thaddeus stood, walked to the window, looked out over the city. I've been in finance for 40 years. I've built a $2 billion firm. I've worked with thousands of people. And you want to know the rarest quality I've encountered? What's that? Genuine integrity. The kind where you do the right thing when it costs you everything, when nobody's watching, when you'd be justified in making a different choice. He turned back to me. You had every reason to keep that money, and you didn't. He pulled out his wallet and handed me a card. Not his business card, but something else. An address, a time. Saturday morning, 2 days away. I want to meet with you, Augustus. Not about the briefcase. about your future. I'd like to teach you what I know about building wealth. Would you be interested? I stared at the card. Why would you do that? Why? Because you passed a test you didn't know you were taking. Because you showed me something I rarely see. Because I never had children, and maybe I can help you build something extraordinary for that boy. I looked down at Marlowe, sleeping peacefully now, completely unaware that his father had just made a choice that would change both our lives. I'd be honored, Mr. Brennan. Call me Thaddeus, and Augustus. Bring your son next time. I'd like to meet him properly. I left that office feeling like I'd walked through a door into a different universe. Not because of money or opportunity, though those would come, but because someone had seen me, really seen me, had looked past my shabby coat and struggling circumstances and seen something worth investing in. That briefcase changed everything. Not because of what was inside it, but because returning it revealed who I wanted to be. For the next 23 years, Thaddeus Brennan became my mentor, my father figure, and the man who would ultimately leave me $105 million as proof that integrity matters more than anything. But first, I had to learn what that really meant. Mentorship isn't about learning techniques or accumulating wealth. It's about having someone believe in you when you can barely believe in yourself. Thaddeus Brennan gave me that gift for 23 years. That first Saturday, I showed up at his Tribeca loft with Marlowe strapped to my chest. I'd almost canceled, couldn't afford a babysitter, and I assumed Thaddeus wouldn't want a fussy infant disrupting our meeting. But when I arrived apologizing, Thaddeus's entire face transformed. "Never apologize for bringing your son," he said, reaching out to touch Marlowe's tiny hand. "Children aren't interruptions. They're the entire point of everything we do." That morning, while Marlowe dozed against me, Thaddeus taught me the first principle of real wealth. "Most people think money is the goal," he said, pouring coffee from an expensive machine. "It's not. Freedom is the goal. The freedom to make choices based on what's right instead of what's necessary. The freedom to be present for your son. The freedom to build a legacy that matters." He opened investment accounts for me that day, put $8,000 of his own money into them. "This is a loan," he said firmly when I protested. "Interest-free, payable when you're able. Use it to learn, and when you're ready, pass the gift forward." For the next 23 years, those Saturday mornings became my education. Thaddeus taught me about compound interest, asset allocation, real estate investment, tax strategy. But more importantly, he taught me about patience, about long-term thinking, about making decisions my future self would thank me for. And he became the grandfather Marlowe never had. As Marlowe grew from infant to toddler to child to teenager, Thaddeus was there. He attended Marlowe's first t-ball game, cheering louder than anyone when Marlowe managed to hit the ball. He showed up at elementary school science fairs, asking detailed questions about Marlowe's solar system project. He took us to Yankees games and fancy restaurants, experiences I could never have afforded alone. But Thaddeus never made it feel like charity. He made it feel like family. "Your father is one of the most honorable men I've ever known," Thaddeus told Marlowe once when Marlowe was 11. We were celebrating Marlowe's straight A report card at an upscale steakhouse. "What makes him honorable?" Marlowe asked with that earnest curiosity children have. "Do you know how I met your father?" Marlowe shook his head. "He found my briefcase with $75,000 in it. He needed that money more desperately than most people ever need anything. He was struggling to take care of you, working impossible hours, barely surviving. And he returned every single penny." Marlowe's eyes went wide. "All of it?" "Every cent, because your father understood something most people never learn. Integrity means doing the right thing when it costs you everything. Thaddeus leaned forward. That's who raised you, Marlowe. Never forget it. I remember the pride in Marlowe's eyes. That memory haunts me now, trying to understand how that proud 11-year-old became the angry 26-year-old who locked me outside his wedding. By the time Marlowe was 16, my portfolio had grown to $3 million. Not because Thaddeus gave me money. He never did after that initial loan, which I repaid within 4 years. But because he taught me how to think differently, how to make strategic decisions, how to be patient. My career advanced too. I made partner at Henderson & Associates through my own work, my reputation for absolute integrity. Clients specifically requested me because they knew if Augustus Hartwell handled their accounts, everything would be done right. Thaddeus was proud in a way my own father never was. My father had been disappointed when I became an accountant instead of a lawyer, disappointed when I married young, disappointed when Evangeline left. But Thaddeus saw success where my father saw failure. Your real achievement isn't the money, Thaddeus said one Saturday when Marlowe was 18. It's that you raised a remarkable young man while never compromising who you are. You showed Marlowe that character matters more than success, even though you achieved both. By Marlowe's 22nd birthday, my portfolio hit $7 million. By his 25th, $14 million. All built through patient investing, through living modestly, through following Thaddeus's guidance. I still lived in the same apartment, still drove a practical sedan. The money wasn't for spending. It was for building something that would last, something I could use to give Marlowe opportunities I never had. Then Thaddeus got sick. It started with him canceling a Saturday session because he wasn't feeling well. In 23 years, Thaddeus had missed maybe 4 sessions total. When he canceled a second week, I went to his loft uninvited. I found him diminished in a way that shocked me. This man who'd always radiated strength looked smaller, frailer, like he was already fading. Pancreatic cancer, he told me without preamble. Stage 4, 6 months, maybe 8 with treatment. I felt like someone had punched through my chest. Thaddeus, no, there must be treatment options, specialists. He held up a hand. I'm 78, Augustus. I've had a full life, built a fortune, helped hundreds of people, made a difference. I'm not afraid of what comes next. But I'm not ready. Marlowe's not ready. We need you. Thaddeus smiled gently. You haven't needed me for years. You just haven't realized it yet. Over the next 7 months, I visited almost daily. Sometimes Marlowe came. Thaddeus drifted in and out of consciousness, the cancer and treatment taking their toll. But in lucid moments, we talked about everything: life, death, legacy, meaning. My protégés were my legacy. But you and Marlowe, you gave me something different. You gave me proof that human goodness still exists. Everything we have is because of you. No, he squeezed my hand weakly. It's because of that choice you made 23 years ago. That moment when you chose character over convenience. I just helped you build on what was already there. He died on a Tuesday morning in March. I got the call at work and had to walk through Manhattan trying to process that the man who'd been more father to me than my own father was gone. The funeral was massive. Business leaders, former protégés, charitable organizations, families he'd helped. At the center, a photo of Thaddeus smiling, looking exactly how I wanted to remember him. The will reading happened 2 weeks later. Various people received generous bequests. Charities received substantial endowments. Then the attorney said, "To Augustus Hartwell, I leave the remainder of my liquid estate, valued at approximately $105 million. The room tilted. Those words didn't make sense. Couldn't be real. The attorney continued. I do this in recognition of the character he demonstrated 23 years ago, and in acknowledgement of the man he has proven to be every day since. However, this inheritance comes with one condition. Augustus Hartwell must use a portion to create meaningful opportunity for his son Marlowe, as I created opportunity for Augustus. The cycle of generosity must continue. Failure to fulfill this condition will result in the inheritance being redirected to the Brennan Foundation. I sat in shock, barely hearing the rest. When it ended, I walked out in a daze. $105 million. Combined with my $14 million, I had a total net worth of $119 million. That night, I called Marlowe and told him everything. His face cycled through shock, confusion, disbelief. Finally, Dad, you don't have to give me anything. Thaddeus left that to you. His condition wasn't about obligation. It's about continuing what he started. He created opportunity for me. Now I do the same for you. I don't need it. I have a good job. I'm about to propose to Celine, and that's exactly why you deserve it. Because you've become the man Thaddeus hoped you'd become. But I didn't tell him my plan. Didn't mention I intended to give him the entire $105 million at his wedding. That was 3 months ago. 3 months before Evangeline found him on social media. 3 months before she poisoned everything Thaddeus built. If I'd just told him then. If I'd been straightforward instead of planning a surprise. If I just... But hindsight changes nothing, and the man Thaddeus mentored was about to face the biggest test of his life. A test that would require deciding if forgiveness was possible, if trust could be rebuilt, if love could survive complete betrayal. But first, you need to see how Evangeline destroyed 23 years of mentorship in 3 months. How she weaponized truth to build lies so convincing that even I questioned my own memories. 3 months before the wedding, while I was meticulously planning how to present the $105 million check, Evangeline Hartwell was planning something entirely different. I didn't know any of this at the time. I only learned it later. Pieced together from fragments of emails and messages Marlowe eventually showed me. But I'll tell it as it happened, because you need to understand how thoroughly, how methodically, how brilliantly Evangeline orchestrated my destruction. She was living in Portland, working as a lifestyle consultant with a modest social media following. At 52, she'd been married and divorced 3 more times since leaving us. No children from any marriage, no lasting connections. She was scrolling through Instagram on a Wednesday in early July when the algorithm suggested a profile. You might know Marlowe Hartwell, her son, the baby she'd abandoned 26 years ago. His profile showed a confident young man in business attire. Status: engaged to Celine Moreau. Employment: senior analyst, Whitmore Strategy Group. Evangeline clicked through his photos. Marlowe at charity galas. Marlowe with friends. Marlowe with Celine, clearly in love. Marlowe at what looked like a promotion celebration. And in several photos, me. Marlowe and I at a Yankees game, at his graduation, on a fishing trip. In every photo, we were comfortable, happy, clearly close. What Evangeline felt, I can't say for certain. But based on what happened next, I don't think it was guilt or regret. I think it was rage. Rage that we'd thrived without her. Rage that I'd succeeded where she'd failed. Rage that Marlowe had grown up happy despite, or because, of her absence. She sent a direct message. Marlowe, this is Evangeline, your mother. I know this is shocking, but I've thought about you every day for 26 years. I understand if you don't want to respond, but I hope you'll let me explain why I left. Marlowe stared at that message for hours before showing Celine. They debated whether to respond, whether to tell me, whether to just block her. Curiosity won. "Why did you leave?" he wrote back. Evangeline's response came within minutes. "It's complicated, Marlowe. Too complicated for a message. I was only 26. Your father and I were struggling financially. The stress, the constant fighting about money. It became unbearable. I made a choice I'll regret forever. I chose survival over motherhood. I'm not asking forgiveness. I just want you to know, leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done." Notice the craft. She didn't lie outright. We were struggling financially. There was stress. But she implied I was responsible, that fights were mutual, that she was escaping something rather than abandoning someone. Marlowe responded, "Dad never mentioned fighting. He said you had postpartum depression and needed space." Evangeline recalibrated. "Of course, that's what he said. Augustus is skilled at rewriting history. I did have postpartum depression, but he refused to let me get help, said we couldn't afford therapy, said I needed to toughen up. Do you know what it's like drowning mentally while your partner tells you to just try harder?" A complete lie. I had begged Evangeline to see someone, had offered to take loans we couldn't afford, had rearranged my schedule to be home more. But Marlowe didn't know that. He only knew what I'd told him. Simplified versions meant to protect him from the truth that his mother simply hadn't wanted him. They talked on the phone that night. Marlowe didn't tell me. Later he said he didn't want to upset me, didn't want to open old wounds. Evangeline's voice was soft, sad, perfectly calibrated. "Leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. Not a day passed that I didn't think about you. Wonder what you looked like. Hope you were okay. Then why never contact me? 26 years of nothing. Because your father made me afraid. After I left, he sent messages saying if I ever tried to contact you, he'd make sure I regretted it. He said he'd poison you against me. So I stayed away, thinking it was better for you to think I didn't care than to know what really happened." Another lie. I never sent threatening messages because I had no way to contact her. But how could Marlowe verify messages from 26 years ago? "What really happened?" Marlowe asked. And Evangeline began building the narrative that would destroy me. She told him about fights we never had, about control I never exerted, about isolation I never imposed. She said I was jealous of her friends, suspicious of her activities, constantly monitoring where she'd been. She said I was emotionally abusive, giving her silent treatment for days, making her feel worthless as a mother. Then she escalated. "There was one night when you were about 5 months old. You were crying, colicky, impossible to soothe. Your father came home, stressed about work. Started yelling at me about why I couldn't keep you quiet. When I tried to defend myself, he pushed me hard. I fell into the wall, hit my head, ended up in the emergency room with a concussion." Marlowe's voice on the phone. "Dad hit you?" He called it an accident, said he was just trying to get past me. But Marlowe, I saw his face. There was rage there, real rage. I knew if I stayed, it would happen again. So I left to protect myself, and I've regretted it every day because I should have taken you with me. Complete fiction, total fabrication. It never happened. But Evangeline had been strategic. Said it when Marlowe was 5 months old, too young to remember. Claimed I'd prevented her from getting help. Claimed I'd threatened her into silence. How do you disprove something that never happened? Marlowe didn't confront me immediately. Instead, he started watching me differently. looking for signs, analyzing our relationship through this poisoned lens. And because Evangeline had mixed truth with lies, Marlowe started seeing patterns that weren't there. That time I'd insisted he call if he'd be late, was that concern or control? That time I'd gotten frustrated about work and snapped before apologizing, was that stress or a glimpse of the real me? Evangeline kept feeding the poison. Weekly calls became daily texts. She sent photos from his infancy she claimed she kept hidden. She told stories only a mother would know, stories probably true but recontextualized to support her narrative. Then, 6 weeks before the wedding, she sent documentation. Hospital intake forms from 26 years ago. Patient, Evangeline Hartwell. Injury, head trauma. Cause, domestic accident. A police report number from the same period. Domestic disturbance call to our address. Therapy notes mentioning relationship stress and situational anxiety. None of it proved what she claimed. The hospital form could have been any accident. The police report was actually from a neighbor complaining about Marlowe's colic. The therapy notes were vague enough to mean anything. But together, presented with Evangeline's narrative, they looked damning. "I have proof, Marlowe," she told him. "I've carried this for 26 years, too afraid to use it. But you deserve to know the truth about who raised you." 3 weeks before the wedding, Marlowe came over for what I thought was a casual dinner. He seemed tense, but I attributed it to pre-wedding stress. Then he asked, "Dad, did you ever hit Mom?" The question was so absurd, I laughed. "What? No. Marlowe, where is this coming from?" "Just answer." "I just did. I never touched your mother in anger. Never. Why are you asking this?" His face hardened. "She contacted me, told me everything. About how you controlled her, hurt her. She has proof. Hospital records, police reports." The room tilted. "Marlowe, no, that's not. She's lying. Whatever she told you isn't true. She said you'd deny it." "Of course I'm denying it. It never happened. Marlowe, your mother left when you were 7 months old. She abandoned us. She chose to leave. I never hurt her, never threatened her, never did anything she's claiming." "Then explain the hospital records." "What hospital records? I don't know what you're talking about, because none of that happened." "I knew you'd lie." He stood abruptly. "She warned me you would." "Marlowe, please. Stay away from my wedding. Stay away from me. I don't want you there." He walked out, leaving me standing in my apartment, surrounded by the ruins of everything I built. I tried reaching him over the next 3 weeks. Every call blocked, every text undelivered. I went to his apartment. The doorman had instructions not to let me up. An email I found after the wedding had been sent 2 days after that dinner. For 3 weeks, Marlowe had been planning to destroy me publicly. That was Evangeline's genius. She didn't just poison Marlowe against me. She helped him orchestrate the perfect revenge for crimes I never committed. And the worst part, I understood why he believed her. If everything she said was true, I would be exactly the monster he thought I was. How do you fight a perfectly constructed lie? How do you prove innocence when absence of evidence becomes proof of guilt? You can't. So I stopped trying, stopped calling, stopped showing up, stopped fighting. I let Marlowe go because holding on only caused more pain. I let Evangeline win because I had no weapons to fight her with. And I retreated into the ruins of my life to figure out how to survive. The months after the wedding were the darkest of my life, darker even than when Evangeline first left, because back then I at least had purpose. I had Marlowe to care for, a reason to exist, a future to build. Now, I had nothing. Leonard called daily the first week. I stopped answering after day 4. Patricia sent worried emails. I deleted them unread. My brother Desmond showed up twice. I pretended not to be home. I went to work because the alternative was staring at walls, but I functioned on autopilot. The numbers were still accurate. The work still thorough, but the passion was gone. I was breathing, but not living. Existing, but not present. The $105 million check sat in my desk drawer like a gravestone. Some days I'd take it out and stare at it, trying to feel something. Anything. But mostly, I felt hollow. Thaddeus's legacy, unfulfilled. His faith, betrayed. His condition, unmet. 6 months passed like that. 6 months of mechanical existence. 6 months of convincing myself this was just how life would be now. Manageable, functional, empty. Then, on a Saturday morning in April, I met Iris Caldwell. I'd forced myself to go to the farmer's market. My apartment had become a takeout graveyard. I was reaching for apples when my hand collided with someone else's. Sorry, we both said simultaneously, then laughed awkwardly. I looked up and saw a woman about my age, maybe early 50s, with intelligent eyes and laugh lines that suggested frequent joy. "You take it," she said, stepping back. "No, please, you were here first." She studied me for a moment. "Are you okay?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine," she grimaced. "Sorry, occupational hazard. I'm a therapist. I see pain and can't help noticing." I meant to make excuses and leave. Instead, "I'm not fine. You're right. Want to talk about it?" Which is how I ended up at a coffee shop telling a complete stranger about the wedding, the rejection, the accusations, the $105 million collecting dust. Iris listened without interrupting, without judging, without empty platitudes. When I finished, she was quiet. Then, "My husband died 4 years ago, stroke, 49, coaching our son's basketball game 1 minute, gone the next." "I'm so sorry." Suddenly, I have 3 kids. Bryce was 15, Nora was 13, Felix was 9. Suddenly, I was a single parent, navigating grief while holding our family together. She sipped her coffee. "You know what I learned? Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who shows up, who stays, who chooses to be present when everything's hard." She looked at me intently. "Your son didn't show up. For 26 years, you showed up. That matters, Augustus. That matters more than any lie." Something cracked in my chest. "But he's my son, my whole life. How do I accept he's gone?" "Maybe you don't. Maybe you just learn to live around the absence, find new purpose, new people to show up for." We talked for 3 hours about loss and survival, about her husband's death and my son's rejection, about finding meaning after everything meaningful has been taken. When we stood to leave, she wrote her number on a napkin. "Coffee next week, if you want. No pressure." I took it, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, but the possibility of it. I'd like that. Over the next year, Iris became my lifeline. She introduced me gradually to her children. Bryce was 19, protective of his mother, initially suspicious, but he softened when I asked about his college major, helped with his resume, showed up at his swim meets. Nora was 17, sharp-witted, using humor as armor against grief. She tested me constantly. I stayed. Felix was 13, artistic and sensitive, carrying grief in his sketchbooks. When I asked to see his drawings, when I listened to what each piece meant, when I helped him apply to an art summer program, That's when he started calling me Mr. Hartwell with genuine warmth. Iris and I grew closer. Slowly, two damaged people learning to trust again. After 18 months, I moved into her house, sold my apartment with its painful memories, and started fresh in a home filled with life and laughter. I still thought about Marlowe, still felt the ache, but the pain was survivable now, no longer all-consuming. Then, 2 years and 4 months after the wedding, on a Friday evening in February, everything changed. I was in the driveway with Felix, helping him practice skateboarding tricks. Iris was inside making dinner. Bryce was home from college for the weekend. Nora was upstairs studying. It was perfect, ordinary, happy. The doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Iris called. Felix attempted an ollie, nearly fell, laughed. "Did you see that?" "Almost had it," I encouraged. Then Iris's voice, strange and strained. "Augustus, you need to come here, right now." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. I told Felix to keep practicing and walked quickly toward the house. Iris stood in the doorway with an expression I couldn't read. Shock, concern, something like compassion. "What's wrong?" "Someone's here to see you." I walked to the front door. Through the open doorway, I saw a man on the porch holding an infant. A double stroller behind him with 2 more babies. All 3, maybe 4 months old. All 3 looking around with curious eyes. The man looked up. "Marlowe." My son was standing on my porch, holding one of his triplet sons, 2 more in the stroller. His face was haggard, aged beyond 2 years, eyes red-rimmed. He looked shattered. Behind him, I could see Celine in a car at the curb, head against the window, equally exhausted. We stared at each other. Bryce had come downstairs, standing protectively in the hallway. Nora emerged from upstairs. Felix had followed me inside. Iris stood behind me, her hand finding mine. Everyone waited. Finally, Marlowe spoke. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking like something breaking. "I need to talk to you." I stood frozen. Part of me wanted to slam the door, wanted him to feel what I felt, to understand the devastation. But I looked at his face, really looked. This wasn't the angry man from the wedding. This was someone broken by learning something hard. "Come inside," I heard myself say. Marlowe's face crumpled with relief. Celine emerged from the car with diaper bags, looking like she might collapse. Iris immediately helped, years of caretaking instinct activating. We moved into the living room like actors in an unrehearsed play. Marlowe sat, holding one baby. Celine held another. I found myself reaching for the third, hands remembering how to support an infant's head. The baby looked up at me with familiar eyes. Thaddeus's eyes, sharp, curious. Something cracked in my chest. "What are their names?" I asked, voice barely audible. Marlowe's voice was thick with emotion. "Thaddeus, Leonard, and Augustus." I looked up sharply. "I named them after the men who showed me what fatherhood means," Marlowe said, tears streaming. "After men I should have trusted instead of." His voice broke completely. We sat in silence. Iris brought water. Nora and Felix entertained the babies with quiet coos. Bryce stood by the door, uncertain but protective. "Tell me what happened," I said finally. Marlowe took a shaky breath. "I was creating baby books, needed documentation, so I requested my birth records from Lenox Hospital. Standard stuff." He paused, looking at Thaddeus in his arms. "They sent everything from my first year, including Mom's hospital records, the real ones." I waited. There was a diagnosis: severe postpartum psychosis, recommendations she not be alone with an infant, notes about paranoid delusions, intrusive thoughts. Dad, she wasn't running from you. She was running from herself. From motherhood. From what she was experiencing. I know, I said quietly. I tried to get her help. She refused. The hospital form she showed me. The head trauma? Real. But the note said she fell carrying me downstairs because she was hallucinating from sleep deprivation. You weren't even home. You were at work. The emergency contact was your office number. I closed my eyes, remembering that terrifying day. The police report was a noise complaint. Mrs. Kowalski next door called because I was crying from colic at 3 a.m. The report says they found a struggling father caring for a colicky infant. No domestic disturbance, no abuse. She weaponized the truth, I said, not accusatory, but factual. She took real documents and built a narrative that sounded believable because parts were real. Marlowe's hand shook, and I believed her, without questioning, without investigating, without giving you any benefit of doubt. What happened after the wedding? I asked. She stuck around 3 months, played doting mother-in-law, showed up constantly. When Celine got pregnant, it got worse. She insisted she'd move in to help, that she knew best about babies. Celine took over. When we found out it was triplets, she lost it. Started talking about how she'd raise them, how this was her second chance. It was suffocating. When I said we didn't need her living with us, she turned vicious. She tried to turn me against Celine, Marlowe said hollowly, just like she did with you. Started saying Celine was controlling, keeping me from my mother, manipulating me. I saw it happening in real time and realized this is exactly what she did to Dad. When I confronted her with the real hospital records, she didn't apologize, said you deserved it for stealing her son. When I told her to leave, she said she'd done me a favor removing you from my life. Then she disappeared, Celine finished. Blocked us everywhere, moved away, just vanished. When the boys were born last month, we were completely alone. No family, no support. Just us and 3 newborns. I looked at the babies, Thaddeus, Leonard, Augustus. 3 beautiful boys who would never know their grandmother. I'm so sorry, Dad, Marlowe whispered. I believed her lies. I rejected you. I humiliated you publicly. I turned my back on 26 years of love because a woman who abandoned me told me convenient stories. I sat holding baby Augustus, feeling 2 years of pain, feeling the temptation to make Marlowe suffer as I'd suffered. But I also felt Iris's presence. Saw Bryce standing protectively, heard Nora and Felix entertaining the babies with genuine joy. This was my family now. People who showed up, who stayed, who chose me. But Marlowe was my son, and these were my grandsons. Marlowe, I said finally, I forgave you 2 years ago. He looked up sharply. I forgave you because holding anger was destroying me, because I couldn't move forward chained to the past, because forgiveness isn't about whether you deserve it. It's about whether I deserve freedom from the poison. I paused. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. Too much has changed. I know, Marlowe said quietly. You destroyed me at that wedding. Rejected 26 years of love publicly. Believed lies without investigation. Cut me out without conversation. That hurt in ways I still can't articulate. I know, but you're still my son. These boys are my grandsons, and I won't punish them for your mistakes. I stood, still holding Augustus, and walked to my study, returned with the leather envelope. I opened it in front of everyone. The check, pristine, unchanged, $105 million made out to Marlowe Augustus Hartwell. Marlowe stared, face going pale. Dad, is that Thaddeus's inheritance? This was supposed to be your wedding gift. My way of fulfilling his legacy. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I tore it in half. Marlowe gasped. Celine's hand flew to her mouth. Iris squeezed my shoulder. Thaddeus didn't want me to just give you money. He wanted me to create opportunity, to teach values. I walked to my study, returned with my checkbook, wrote a new check and handed it to Marlowe. $2 million. For Thaddeus, Leonard, and Augustus's education. Put it in trust accounts. When they're 18, they'll have opportunities. Dad, I can't. It's not for you. It's for them. The rest, the remaining $103 million, goes to the Thaddeus Brennan Foundation, a charity helping single parents struggling to raise children alone. Education funding, childcare support, career development, creating opportunities for people doing what I did. I looked directly at Marlowe. That's how I fulfill Thaddeus's condition, not by making you wealthy, but by passing forward his values, by helping others, by ensuring his legacy matters. I don't deserve even that $2 million, Marlowe said through tears. You're right, you don't, but your sons do. I'm not giving this to you, I'm giving it to them. Their grandfather's gift. Iris stepped forward. Augustus, maybe give them space. No, they need to understand something. I looked at Marlowe. You want back in my life? You want your sons to know their grandfather? That takes time. You can't destroy 26 years of trust and rebuild it in one conversation. I understand. Weekly dinners, here, with Iris and her kids. My family now. You'll get to know them. We'll build something new. Not what we had. That's gone. But something different. Something real. 18 months later, the Thaddeus Brennan Foundation opened in a restored building in Brooklyn. First floor, childcare for single parents in job training upstairs. Second floor, career counseling, educational support, financial literacy. Third floor, partner organization offices. At the opening, I stood at the podium with Iris beside me. Marlowe and Celine were in the audience, with the triplets, now nearly 2 years old. Bryce, Nora, and Felix sat together. My found family. Leonard and Patricia were there. Desmond and his family. Colleagues from Henderson and Associates. Thaddeus Brennan believed wealth without values was worthless, I said. He taught me that the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's integrity, opportunity, and courage to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. I gestured to the framed, torn check on the wall behind me. This check represented $105 million. I tore it, not because the money didn't matter, but because values mattered more. Because my son needed to learn what Thaddeus taught me, that real legacy isn't in bank accounts, but in hearts and communities and transformed lives. I looked at Marlowe, crying quietly, holding Thaddeus. Celine had Leonard. Felix was making Augustus giggle. This foundation will help hundreds of single parents build better lives, create opportunities for struggling families, pass forward the gift Thaddeus gave me, not money, but belief. Belief that character matters, that integrity pays dividends beyond calculation, that showing up matters more than any inheritance. After the ceremony, Marlowe approached. We'd had dinner every Sunday for 18 months. Slowly, carefully, building something new. Dad, he said quietly, Thaddeus would be proud. He'd be proud of the man you're becoming, learning from mistakes, raising your sons, showing up every week. That's the legacy he wanted. Iris joined us, Felix trailing behind. Mr. Hartwell, Felix said, can Augustus come to my art show next month? He's almost 2, Felix. He won't understand what he's seeing. But I want him there. I want all of them there. They're my brothers too, kind of. I looked at Iris smiling, at Marlowe, overwhelmed by how naturally Felix had absorbed his sons. At the 3 babies who would grow up knowing love came in many forms. Yes, I said, pulling Felix into a hug. We'll all come, because that's what family does. Real family, built on showing up, staying, choosing each other. I stood in the foundation bearing Thaddeus's name, surrounded by family I'd chosen and the son who'd chosen to come back, and realized I'd been locked outside my son's wedding, with $105 million in my pocket, thinking I'd lost everything. But losing everything taught me what actually mattered. Grief broke me open so love could rebuild me differently. Betrayal destroyed one family so I could discover another. The gates closed on one life so I could walk through a door into something richer than any inheritance, more valuable than any fortune. Thaddeus had been right. Wealth without values is worthless. But values without wealth? That's the inheritance that actually matters. And now, finally, I could pass it forward. If this story resonated with you, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel, not for me, for you. Because stories like this, stories about resilience and forgiveness and what actually matters, these are the stories we need to hear. Hit that notification bell. Share this with someone struggling with betrayal, someone rebuilding after loss, someone trying to figure out what legacy really means. And comment, what's the most valuable inheritance you've ever received? Not money. Values, lessons, wisdom. What did someone give you that changed your life? I read every comment. Your stories matter. Thank you for letting me share mine. Thank you for understanding that the most powerful stories aren't about victory. They're about survival, choosing to keep showing up even when every gate seems locked. Show up. Stay. Choose love. Build legacy. That's how we honor people like Thaddeus. That's how we transform locked gates into open doors.